Welcome to today's edition of Weathering the Storms of Life with the Rainses. Rob Rains, Sally Tippett Rains here, continuing our little presentation of some little video quizzes here on stlsportspage.com, as well as putting them up on rainbowsforkids.org, our charity that we support here at the website. So it's hopefully we're getting closer to baseball time. We're back to doing some baseball quizzes, which I guess gets us thinking a little bit more about baseball. And we had a Zoom chat last night with some baseball fans from around the country talking about the Cardinals, about what we think is going to happen. So keep your fingers crossed that everybody stays healthy and stays home here and gets through the stay-at-home orders, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get back to playing baseball soon.
Yeah, that conversation was really interesting. You can find it on our website, stlsportspage.com. But it was interesting because this is the second Zoom call you've had, and you have different people on the calls that offer a different perspective, and that's what's so interesting. It's not just sports reporters or fans. It's kind of people with interesting perspectives about the Cardinals.
One of the interesting, I think, things was that the general consensus was that they would prefer not to play, even as die-hard fans as these guys were, and some of them were season ticket holders. They would prefer not to have games with no fans and playing in Florida or Arizona. So I'm sure the public opinion is going to matter when baseball comes to making these decisions about what they're going to do, but not as the foremost decision. Obviously, economics is going to drive the decision, but I think the fans' input should be considered.
How do you feel about it? Why don't you go to our contact page on STL Sports Page and tell us, we're interested in knowing what you're missing the most out of the season. What, was there something you were planning to do? Go to one of the games, one of the trips?
London.
Yes. And we were actually planning on having a big event down at the Springfield, a family event down at the Springfield Cardinals, and that probably won't be able to happen. So did you have any family reunions, anything specific that you were looking forward to that you missed? We'd love to hear from you.
Yep, write us in at stlsportspage@gmail.com. So before we get to today's questions, we have your words of wisdom for the day. The questions today are going to be about Red Schoendienst.
You always believed that as good as you knew you were, there was always somebody who could take your place. I tried to work as hard as I could to make sure that didn't happen. And Red Schoendienst said that. And that kind of went along with that Thomas Edison thing about genius is 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration. Just kind of the work ethic that Red always had, and keep working, never give up. And I kind of like during this quarantine time, if your definition of working is just waking up and getting out of bed, if you're feeling down or desperate or whatever, just keep going. Just keep doing the best you can. Kind of during this time, our level of how much we can achieve is sort of different than it is in the normal times. And we want to just really encourage you to keep going and to realize that this is going to be over someday. And if you keep moving forward and don't give up, you can emerge from this even better than you started out.
Absolutely. Hey, I had the honor years ago of writing Red's book, and it was interesting. We always at one of his anniversary parties with wife Mary there, and a lot of people. Whitey was there, obviously, and Stan was there, Musial, and some of the other people. Jim Toomey was the Cardinals public relations director at the time, and we just felt very honored, very privileged to be around Red as many times as we were at some of the barbecues and some of the Bat Boys parties down in St. Pete at the spring training games, and so it was always a fun guy to be around, and he and his wife Mary as well. One of the funny stories that came out about writing the book was when I was doing one of the early interviews with Red and Mary sitting in their living room at their house, and Red said something, a story that we recorded, and then Mary looked at him and goes, I don't think we can put that in the book. And so then a few minutes later, Mary proceeded to tell a story, and Red looked at her and goes, we're not going to put that in the book. So me, being the writer, sat there and said, guys, we got to put something in the book. So turned out pretty well. I mean, obviously Red, not going to be a controversial figure by any means, but did have a very interesting life and a very interesting career, and more than 70 years in baseball, wearing a baseball uniform, mostly for the Cardinals. So it was a privilege and honor to be around him and call him a friend and be able to do his book.
The thing I liked about Red and his family was, as famous as he was, and he's a Hall of Famer and he's done so much, and actually, Colleen sang the national anthem at the Cardinals game and stuff. He always kind of reminded me of my dad, and that family always kind of reminded me of our family, is because they were just, their family came first, and baseball was just what he did, and it was just a joy to be around them.
And Mary, Red's wife, was the most loyal wife you could ever have. I mean, she
you got to tell that story about the Stan Musial contract
when
story?
When Musial got the record contract, and the Cardinals were also negotiating with Red on a contract, and she actually went into the office, the front office, and said, look, here's how much money you're paying Stan Musial. Here's how much money you've offered my husband, Red. He goes, don't you think Red is half as good as Stan?
I
So,
love that.
different
And then
era.
they had
Different
the
times.
cardinal collection. They had in their house. They had the beautiful
Mm,
glass cardinals, tons of them in their little curio thing.
yeah, great guy.
Cool family.
All right, on to the questions. Question one. You can either play along with the piece of paper and write them down, or else just think along with us as we go through the questions. And then when we get done with all the questions, 10 questions, we'll go back and give you the answers. So, question one: Red is obviously a nickname. What is Red's actual given first name? We asked that about Ozzie Smith yesterday. So, kind of interesting how a lot of the Cardinals
They
from
all had the
previous
nicknames.
eras all had nicknames we talked about before. Now, the current guys don't really have that many
That's
nicknames.
right.
So, what was Red's real first name? That was question one.
Question two. While Red spent the majority of his career with the Cardinals, he also played for two other teams. What other teams did Red Shandies play for besides the Cardinals?
Question three. In 1959, Red was able to play in only 5 games after becoming ill with a serious illness. What was that illness?
What was the illness that Red Shandies got in 1959? Question four. How many World Series championships was Red Shandies a part of as either a player, coach, or manager in his career?
Okay. Question five. How old was Red when he died in 2018? How old was Red when he died in 2018?
Question six. How many Major League games did Red Shandies see in person before he played in his first game with the Cardinals in 1945? And remember, he lived near St.
Germantown,
Louis.
Illinois. Born and raised in Germantown, Illinois. So, how many games did Red see in person before that debut? Okay. Question seven. Red did not start wearing uniform number 2, obviously retired now by the Cardinals, until his second season with the team in 1946. What number did he wear as a rookie in 1945? What number did Red wear as a rookie in 1945, obviously during World War II? And Red, of course, was not able to. He was in the Army for a little while at the end of 1944, but obviously because of the eye injury that he suffered as a kid when a nail bounced up off a fence post he was building and hit him in the eye, lost some vision in that eye, so he was had to be medically cleared that he wasn't able to go fight him during the war.
Number 8. Red made his MLB debut on April 17th, 1945, when the Cardinals played the Cubs at Wrigley Field. He was in the starting lineup, hitting third, but what position was he playing?
Mm-hmm. So what position did Red play when he made his Major League debut? Okay, question 9. During most of his career, when the Cardinals were on the road and staying in hotel rooms, he had the same roommate. Who was Red's roommate most of his career on the road?
And the last question about Red Shandies. In one capacity or another, Red was was with the Cardinals for more than 70 years, earning him another nickname around the franchise. What was that nickname?
Okay, that's our questions about Red. So here come the answers. If you knew Osborne Earl Smith was Ozzy's real first name, you probably knew that Albert Fred was Red's.
Oh, that's right,
nickname.
Fred. Albert Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Albert Fred Red Shandies.
Shortened to Red, yes. Okay. Question 2.
While Red spent the majority of his career with the Cardinals, he played for two other teams. They were Milwaukee and New York Giants. Milwaukee Braves and New York Giants.
Mm-hmm. The late 50s. So. In 1959, Red was able to play in only 5 games because he contracted tuberculosis. Actually, a lot of the doctors said he was not going to be able to come back and play at all, that it would end his career, but he was able to come back and play for a couple more seasons after that.
And as you said, he had the eye injury.
Mm-hmm.
He really overcame a lot, but he never wanted to be known as the person who had those problems. So I just read today that when he was interviewed about, what was it like to come back from tuberculosis or playing well with, and he said, "Well, I'm fine. So why are you asking me that question? I'd have to get another strain of tuberculosis to know about that."
Yeah, sounds like Red. Question 4, the World Series championships, he won 5 as a player, coach, or manager. With the Cardinals as a player in 1946, with the Braves when he played there in 1957, and obviously as a coach for the Cardinals in 64, the manager of the Cardinals in 67, and back to being a coach again in 82. Didn't count the other couple in 2006 and 2011 because he technically was not a coach, he was more of a special assistant at the time. So you said 7, you were actually correct, but I was asking these at home, but you were counting the 2 that he was there just as kind of a special assistant.
Oh, sure I was.
7 rings. Okay, did have 7 rings over the years, so that's quite a few. Okay.
All right, how old was Red when he passed away in 2018? He was 95.
And at the time, he was the oldest living member of the Baseball Hall of Fame before his death.
And it was incredible. He was still going.
Oh yeah, up till that last year. I mean, I think he missed opening day for the first time ever, I think. But yeah, up until the very end, he was still very active.
And people say that he's one of the people they miss the most at spring training.
Mm-hmm.
They will miss the most.
Yeah,
And they did miss it
riding
when
around
we
on his
had
little
it.
golf cart.
Riding around on his little golf cart. And usually if you would see a guy 94 years old riding around on a golf cart, you might be going, get off the golf cart. You shouldn't be on
Or
there.
at least
But
let somebody else drive.
he was just always very substantial and out there doing it. You never,
Very active, hunting, fishing,
Just a-
very
Mhm.
outdoorsman kind of a guy. So, yeah. How many Major League games did Red see in person before he played in one? The answer is 0. None.
Never
Not
came
not
over
really
to
a
the
surprise.
Cardinal game. That's crazy.
Had to hitch a ride on the milk truck to come over for his tryout.
Oh, that's right.
So, he and Joe Linneman together. Red did not start wearing uniform number 2 until 1946. His second season with the Cardinals, he actually wore number 6 in 1945. That was Stan Musial's number. Stan had worn the number from 42 to 44, but then left for the military service in 45. So Red wore that number 6 that year, while Lou Klein wore number 2 that season. And then when Stan came back in 46, Red switched to number 2 and stayed with that number for the rest of his career.
You can do number 8.
Number 8. When Red made his Major League debut in Chicago, Wrigley Field, April 17, 1945, he actually played left field. He played left field almost all of that first rookie season and didn't switch to second base until the second season in 1946.
Number 9, during most of his career when the Cardinals were on the road, staying in hotels, Red had the same roommate. Who was he?
Stan Musial.
And they were best friends
Two of a kind.
for life.
Yeah, absolutely. In one capacity or another, the final question, Red was with the Cardinals for more than 70 years, earning him the nickname, which was Mr. Cardinal. Of course, never be another guy like Red Shandy. So appreciate it. Hope you did well on these quizzes. We'll be back with another edition of this quiz program, Weathering the Storms of Life with the Rangers, here on STLSportspage.com, also rainbowforkids.org.